Tom Luongo, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Henry. How's it going? It's good to meet you.
Good to meet you too. So Dave Collum, your buddy, was my first guest here on Who Knows. So I have to ask you this. What is it with you scientists? You guys just cannot stay in your own lane.
No, we really can't, because when your mind has been trained. But we see, this is the thing, and it's chemistry. Forget those physics guys. I'm a biologist. Please, those guys are relative to us. Those guys are social scientists. No, I kid. No, I really don't kid. Okay. No, I don't. What is it about? It's when your mind's been trained. At least it's funny when your mind's been trained properly, and you have a good grounding in both. I think there's Dave and I have we both been kind of trained differently. When I talked to Dave and I found out, I had him on my podcast, and he mentioned that he's not a math guy. So he's an organic chemist, and he's really, and I remember being struck when I took organic chemistry in college, how little math there was. This was after high school chemistry and a year of general chemistry, which is all nothing but horrible freaking math. And none of which we really understood, because they hadn't taught us why the math is what it is. They just told us what to do. And, in general chemistry, which is terrible, but organic chemistry is all very qualitative. It's just looking at structures and, and how bonds are deformed and whatnot. It's a very qualitative thing. And so it's a very almost artistic part of chemistry, right? And so I think Dave has an artistic side to him that he doesn't, I'm not sure he even understands. And for me, the entire time I was studying chemistry, I took all of my electives in the English department, taking poetry workshops and, taking lecture classes on 19th, 20th century British and American poetry and stuff. This is what I was doing. And I was playing music and, fancying myself a writer. So I was doing chemistry to pay the fucking bills. Like it's the only thing my parents would effectively, I liked enough that my parents would pay for. So it was always that problem. So I always wanted to be a writer, always wanted to be an artist. So but you got trained in good scientific method and compartmentalization of boundary conditions, especially taking things like physics and certainly physical chemistry, which is all taught as a series of thought experiments. Here's the boundary conditions of the universe, solve this stuff, and then see what that implies. And that was just very good training. And it was very good training for someone who was also fancied himself as, kind of an artist or a writer or whatever. So there's that nice balance between the two things. Yeah. And so I think Dave and I both have a real, I think that's why Dave is like, he's like, I never took calculus. I'm like, fuck, did you get a chemistry degree and run the organic chemistry department at Cornell and have never taken calculus? I know. And I love math, but I also at the same time, I love math. I love calculus, and I love that stuff from a kind of metaphoric level. I use math metaphors all the time, and I really do see calculus, which is the mathematics of change and how systems are dynamic and change. That's a very powerful metaphor, and it's a very powerful metaphor to talk about in your writing and everything else. And to this day, every time I talk about these things, I still flash back to when one of my poetry instructors, William Logan, said to me, "Well, scientific stuff doesn't work in poetry." And I just looked at him and went, "Fuck you, dude." I walked out of his office. We literally were like, "Yeah, fuck you, dude. You don't have no idea what you're talking about." And I just walked out. And then I got a B in this class. The only poetry workshop I got a B in, because they were just easy A's. You showed up, you contributed, you get an A. This guy, no, he graded stuff. He was so fucking left brain, it was retarded. And he fancied himself a poet. He graded our poems.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was this dumb. He gave out assignments every week like it was a normal class. I'm like, fuck is wrong with this guy? Okay, whatever. And then there's no, but he graded our poems harsher than the crazy old school professors that I had to suffer through in the chemistry department. I'll need to go hang out with Dr. Katie Williams. Understand? It was insane. It was walking back and forth between at the University of Florida, between Lee Hall and Turlington Hall. Yep. We're right next door to each other. The chemistry building and the English department were right next door to each other. And you walk back and you think back on it and you're like, yeah, the insanity was there then, and it was just incubating.
Oh, interesting. Well, it's interesting. I've got like the people I read and listen to. I've got you and Dave, the chemist, and then
Mm-hmm.
the people I trust the most that can like analyze how the financial system functions are engineers. It's Lynn Alden and
Mm-hmm.
Michael Saylor. None of them like come up through traditional finance to me, and I wonder if
Right.
there's some connection there too with engineering, where those people see it functioning like a system so much better than I've ever heard.
Mm.
Who knows?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, maybe it's just a matter of, different people learn differently, and they see the world differently. Systemic thinkers are rare, right? And I'm not busting my hand, patting myself on the back or anything but people who think systemically and they think from multiple perspectives, they're rare. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and they only
Yeah.
come up every once in a while through the zeitgeist, and it doesn't matter where their training is, right? If they have that inclination, right? And I think Dave has that inclination. I'd like to believe that I have that inclination. Certainly, Lynn Alden has that inclination, and certainly like
Yeah.
Michael Saylor does.
Yeah.
Then doesn't matter where where their training was. They were going to apply that that mechanism of how they see the world, how they think, to whatever it is that they're that they're dealing with at that moment in time, right?
Yeah.
And what they're focusing on at that moment in time. And so then the fun part is applying that to different idioms, and then
Yeah.
seeing applying that filter to different idioms, be it to literature or board games or
Yeah.
chemistry or the language and the craft of language or whatever it is, or the financial markets. It all just winds up being, once you can like apply it in a particular way, you can take that framework, that method of how you think, and apply it to see what you're seeing. And maybe that's the benefit. I don't have a classical education, but I have people around me who have, and I've had to learn those types of mechanisms, Socratic method and stuff like that,
Yeah.
just through like osmosis and inference and and interpolation over time. But I didn't really like study. I didn't study rhetoric. I didn't study formal philosophy or anything. I barely studied history. These are all hard
Mm-hmm.
won things that I've had to learn over the years, and y'all just watch me learn it in real time and react to it in real time. So, you'll go back and listen to interviews I did 6 years ago, and they're like, it's embarrassing, right? But that's a good thing. It's a good sign. It means that your mind is open and you're willing to engage in new ideas. Excuse me, at a regular on a regular basis, and
Right.
and you're not locked into a particular thing, and that's very important.
Totally. Well, so you got all the board games behind you. Why don't you take us through the chessboard politically right now? I mean, it's 2 to 3 weeks ago or whatever was the debate, and then the left turning on Biden, then Biden saying he's staying in the race, and then the Trump assassination attempt. I mean, obviously there's much more, but this is all in the last few weeks. What the heck is going on?
Well, it's funny for my patrons the other day, because I do what I call the market reports, which are basically private video podcasts. I talk over slides. So I do these twice a week on Wednesdays and Sundays, and they really form kind of the backbone of what we offer over at Gold, Goats, and Guns, along with the newsletter. And because it's a private 2 hours a week that I download my latest thoughts on current events and the markets, and doing technical analysis on the important markets, gold, silver, oil, that kind of thing. But in that Sunday market report after the Trump shooting, it finally hit me in a flash, because it'd been something I've been gnawing at the back of my head for like 2 weeks. The same question that everybody's been asking me on Twitter and blah, 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 which is like, dude, why did Trump agree to the debate? Hell, why was the debate scheduled when it was? And now you think about everything that's been going on since the beginning of Q3, since the beginning of July. And I could I could like lay out like now about half an hour's worth of stuff that I've been like thinking about for the last 2 weeks. But it boils down to this. They had the NATO summit, where they were going to announce whatever they wanted to announce about, Ukraine joining NATO and all the mutual defense pacts and the move and the move over the new general secretary and blah, 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 blah. You had the NATO summit in Washington. You had the French elections. You had the British elections, all timed to be after the beginning of Q3. Okay, in the lead up, it was like, this is the Gantt chart, as I like to talk of the Gantt chart, Microsoft project file over Global Essential. All these things were on the timeline. All these things were supposed to happen, and Trump was supposed to be sentenced on July 11th.
Mm-hmm.
Viktor Orban goes off script and goes around the world, meets with Zelensky, Putin, Xi, goes to NATO, then meets with Trump at Mar-a-Lago. He meets with Trump at Mar-a-Lago on Friday, and they take a pot shot at him on Saturday, when Trump was supposed to be arraigned and in jail the day before.
Wow.
Right?
Yep.
Lawfare ended. Now you got to take a pot shot at it. Like, that's the thing. Now, everybody during this whole process, Emmanuel Macron never really looked like he was sweating over the election. No one really looked like they were sweating over the UK election. Like, they were gaslighting us that Nigel Farage and Reform Party were going to do better than they did. They were pumping him up as opposed to knocking him down, right? Mm-hmm. They weren't talking about, oh my God, Farage may win. They were like, interesting, Farage may win. They beat the Tories, right? Because they wanted to push the Tories out of power. They wanted to destroy the Tories, hand the country over to Labour. So Farage gets 4 seats and 14% of the vote, and everybody's like, oh, and now they can complain about all sorts of, now they can use all that as well. They can do the same thing by freezing out Marine Le Pen and telling everybody she's going to win, and then, doing what the French always do, which is to collapse. Their political immune system always collapses to, embrace the cancer as opposed to allow the chemotherapy to come in to fix France. Mm-hmm. This is the way the French system has been designed forever. Meanwhile, they're, going forward with, no one wants Ursula von der Leyen and Kaja Kallas and the rest of them to be running the European Union. Doesn't matter. They're going to be there anyway. They're acting like they don't even, it doesn't matter what you want. This is what we're doing. Everybody was acting with this kind of calm that everything was on target. And that was unnerving me. I'm getting to the answer to your question. Just let me lay the background on. So this is really bothering me. And I kept asking people, why the debate? Why the debate? Why the debate? I'm like, well, then the debate happens. They clearly turn on Biden overnight for the purpose of getting rid of him, because they were always planning to get rid of Biden. So they froze out RFK from the primary process to ensure that they could have Biden. Then they were going to get rid of Biden, right? But getting rid of Biden doesn't guarantee them the election. Because none of the Biden's replacements are any better than him. Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitman Chains. It doesn't matter who you're dealing with. They're all suck. And and everybody hates them, either within the party or Hillary Clinton, right? They either within the party they're hated, or by the rank and file, by general Americans they're hated. So who would ever believe that they could beat Donald? None of these people can beat Donald Trump. None of them. In a fair fight, or even in a reasonably unfair fight, which is what we now expect. So what was the plan? Well, the plan was always what I said back in inference that I had, back in February. I was writing for the newsletter, for our monthly newsletter, and in my lead article, I was talking about demoralization. This is a massive demoralization campaign that Davos is running on us, and that the Brits and Davos and all these fucking horrible European vampires are running on us. And I'm like, very clear. So what would be the most demoralizing thing imaginable? Get rid of Trump, put him in jail, replace Biden, and leave us with Hillary versus Nikki Haley. Because I couldn't figure out why Nikki Haley was staying in the race until Super Tuesday. Because clearly she wasn't going to win anything. She was just trying to collect some delegates and to give herself some street cred, because she was picked certainly by the British, right? By the old British neoconservative wing of the GOP, and of the European foreign policy set. Because look, war with Russia, to destroy Russia and carve it up, is a 500-year-old British project. But it's not like the French don't want this, and it's not like the Germans don't want this, and it's not like the Portuguese and the Spanish and the old Dutch money. Not like they don't all want it too. That's the one thing they all agree on. What they don't agree on is who gets to run Europe after they've destroyed Russia. That's a different topic. That's why it always looks like one big club and we're not in it, but it really isn't. It's multiple clubs, but they all have different agendas. But the center of their Venn diagram is destroy Russia. That's been their project for 500 years. It's nothing new. So now, and keep Germany and Russia from ever coming together, right?
Okay.
So, so when you really stop to think about it, like, well, how do you win the election? Well, you kill Trump and you get rid of Biden all in the same week, and then you easily, on 2 days before the convention, you kill Trump, you install Haley. The Republican Party is thrown into a complete tizzy. The country is fucking angry as all get out. Everyone's demoralized massively. Hillary steps in, gets to be the friggin' nominee, which is what she's always wanted. Which the most salient meme I saw on Saturday night was the picture of Hillary like stepping out from behind the refrigerator, going, "What do you mean they missed?"
Yeah.
Like, right?
Yeah.
So to me, it was really obvious. I think that on their Gantt chart, this was their plan because they're calm. Their whole demeanor of all of these people who I follow on a daily basis, and I'm like, my spidey sense is telling me this is, they had it. They think, oh, we have this ring fenced. Don't worry about Trump. This is ring fenced. We're going to take care of this. He's going to get killed or he's going to get taken off the board. And they never in a moment expected him to survive.
So
let me just remind everybody one last time, because I've done it in every public appearance I've done since Saturday night. I've only done 2 or 3. Trump was a pot shot was taken at Trump, and he was nearly assassinated, if not for his desire, him looking up at the jumbotron for the first time in forever on the one evening, 2 days after he was supposed to be sentenced by a corrupt judge in New York, that CNN was covering live. CNN hadn't covered a Trump rally live in 40 forevers, certainly in all of this year. And they were covering that one.
Oh, wow.
They were covering that one because they knew. I'm sorry. That screams to me that these fucking people knew what was going to happen, and CNN was going to get the scoop. They were going to have, and they were going to then become, and that's how. So they got the threefer. They were going to get the soy boy, kid who's unhappy with Trump, and they were going to like paint him as a magatard, with an AR for gun control purposes, and restore CNN. Right. All in the same time. We have a phrase in capital markets, hogs get fat and pigs get slaughtered. Mm-hmm. It just, part of me just thinks, I don't care if you believe the story I just told you or not. I don't really care. This is where I think it all comes down. And you ask my opinion on this is where I think it is. And it's going to be very hard for me with all of the things that that have come out over the last 72 hours since Trump was shot, that, all of this stuff tells me that, someone took a pot shot at him. And for anybody to think that the standard FBI lone gunman theory that they always promulgate in the first 24 hours is nonsense. It was nonsense. Like, John Hinckley was not a lone gunman. Like, neither was Lee Harvey Oswald, and neither was this kid. Okay? They weren't. It's that simple. It's just like, everything about this night looks exactly the same as the setup for when they killed Shinzo Abe in Japan. Security was light. There were anomalies, and somehow this kid got through with a spinning punk gun and shot him. And same thing with Robert Fisto in Slovakia. How his route was changed, his detail was changed. There's all this stuff, and you're like, of course, this is how this crap works. And so they did the same thing with Trump. And how is this kid get up on top of the roof of the building the Secret Service are using as their freaking staging area? And like, are you kidding me? When you got people screaming for 2 minutes, there's a guy with a gun, and Trump is still on stage talking. Like, please pull together like it plays Jingle Bells. And my Aunt Min played for the Giants in the 1950s. Took touchdowns and scored touchdowns from Y.A. Tittle. Like, give me a fucking break. Like, it's just dumb, and I'm not listening to it anymore. That's Occam's razor. Incentive, motive, means, opportunity, circumstantial evidence, all point in that direction. You go with it. And then you get to prove to me that it wasn't. And they won't prove anything. And then we get Christopher Wray come out yesterday and say they can't break into his phone. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, so if it's an iPhone, I know that Apple won't give out, won't break into somebody's phone for law enforcement unless law enforcement comes up with a warrant. You don't think that the FBI couldn't get a warrant from a judge to in 4 minutes to show to Apple to open up the fucking phone? Give me a break. Like, as far as I'm concerned, Christopher Wray we need to like suspend habeas corpus against Christopher Wray right now. Bring him into Congress with a waterboarding setup and waterboard him on national television until he gives up the fucking truth. That's what I think should be going on. But I'm not president. Maybe with good reason. Like, this is like, seriously, like, this is what needs to happen. These people need to. We're at that moment, Henry, where everybody needs to realize that they just think they can do this stuff and get away with it. They want to shift the Overton windows. Let's take the temperature down. Political violence doesn't have any place. Bullshit. You people have like patented political violence. This is you trying to say, well, we're trying to get out from underneath it. We're trying to we know you did this. Now you get to stand there and take it. And we're coming for you like we should. Why is this? This has to happen. And they go, oh, no. And the Republicans who are freaking controlling opposition will always turn around and go, well, we don't want to sink to their level. Yes, we do, actually. Like, we have every justification for doing so. They're mass murderers, and they just tried to they just tried to destroy our entire political system and execute a coup. Because do you think there was going to be an election this fall? If Trump had been shot, if Trump had turned his head in the final minute, do you think there was going to be an election this fall? Is that air you think you're breathing? Like, this is insane to even. I mean, and I've been having to deal with this like internally within my own community and whatnot. Everybody just wants to like, oh, we're gonna eliminate all the like. No, we don't have to be Sherlock fucking Holmes here and eliminate all other possibilities in order to get to the truth. We know what happened. It's right there in front of us. There's a hole in his ear and this, and the guy missed. Yeah, it's that simple. Now what? And had he hit, like, and you're still going to go through this lone gunman bullshit. You're still going to fall for that? Great. Thank you for neutralizing yourself and taking yourself off the board. Now I don't have to listen to another thing you have to say. Great. I have other people who are actually going to give me signal as opposed to noise, because that's all I care about. Again, former analytic chemist. All I care about is signal, not noise.
Yep. So if this is the deep state or Davos or whatever you want to call it, does that mean they've got some grand plan? Does that mean they're 0 for the last 2 with the debate, and then immediately everybody turning on Biden on the left and then missing Trump?
They're 1-1. They're 1-1.
Why is that?
Well, they wanted to get rid of Biden. Like, they needed to prep the field to be able to put whoever they wanted to in power. Why my Hillary versus Haley metaphor or scenario works so well? Because no matter who wins, we lose. Haley is just as bad as Haley's not as bad as Hillary. I mean, gun to my head, I would choose Nikki Haley over Hillary because I got 50 years with the track record that this bitch has everybody killed who gets anywhere near her. Like, fine. And Haley, is going to be one of those people who they can arm twist into doing whatever they want. And that means that if somehow the counter forces within the United States that are trying to save this country, which are very, very clear at this point, were somehow able to wrest control of the situation at a later date, they could turn Haley if they needed to. Right? Because she's got plenty of skeletons in her closet. Hillary, she's irredeemable. And I don't say that lightly about very many people. Okay, so but that's why this would be a perfect setup. No matter who wins, we lose. It's like, it's one way of looking at like Lincoln Douglas in 1860. They got rid of James Buchanan so that they ensured that the banks, after the Panic of 1857, again, this is one framework on this. It's not the entire framework, but that after the Panic of 1857, we wound up with an Illinois railroad banker versus an Illinois railroad banker.
Oh.
Okay? Yeah. Stephen Douglas, Abraham Lincoln. Like, now, that's not the only way to view that election, but it is one perspective. Now, is Hillary versus Haley the perfect British neoconservative extension of their foreign policy? Both of them would be, they're John Bolton with bras. Like, this is not hard here. They're going to go after Russia, and they'll take it to the point of threatening us with nuclear freaking war. You put Donald Trump in the office, that is not what's going to happen. And I don't give a shit what anybody says about what they think about Donald Trump being a warmonger and yada, yada, yada. Bullcrap. You cannot mistake Trump's big ask negotiating style with actual warmongering. They're not the same thing. Okay? They're not. And Trump was manipulated into a bunch of foreign policy mistakes in his first term by people who will not be anywhere near the White House in the second term. If you think that John Bolton is going to be anywhere near the White House in the second term, or Mike Pompeo, or Mike Pence, or any of these people,
right, or
hell, Jared Kushner, like none of these people are going to be there. It's going to be a much different crew. Okay? And because Trump has learned his lesson. They just took a pot shot at him, dude.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't think that he doesn't know that what this is about, like, this is a guy that was trained by Roy Cohn, one of the greatest gangsters of all time. Like, don't ever forget that. Don't ever forget that, you know, that Trump may have been outmaneuvered in 2017 through 2021 at every turn. The infrastructure wasn't there for him to maneuver. He didn't have. He made mistakes. He let Mike Flynn go. He, you know, threw Mike Flynn under the bus for whatever reason. Like, he made mistakes early on that then set the tempo and set the tone for his entire presidency. But at the same time, he survived it. He nearly got reelected. So in some ways, you know, you have to give the guy credit for what he did get done and you know, sure, you'll lambaste him for what he didn't get done. But at the same time, ask yourself the question, could you have done better? I don't know. I don't have that. I can't answer that question, right? But I can tell you that two things happened under Trump's presidency that matter. And we're seeing the dividends of that being paid today. The first was putting Jerome Powell in at the Federal Reserve, who then put moved John Williams from the San Francisco Fed to the New York Fed, and the implementation of SOFR, which in 5 years, or in the last 7 years, has completely altered the structure of the global dollar markets. They are now American-based, based on what's happening in American markets, not what's happening in the City of London. That's a big fucking change. There's it may be the most consequential change of anything that has occurred in the last 100 freaking years, 110 years since the formation of the Federal Reserve. Okay? I need everybody to understand this. That the Eurodollar markets were what created the American empire. And what created the more I study it, they created the mechanisms by which the American governmental system and legal system and cultural strength was undermined with our own fucking tax dollars, sent overseas, levered up 18 to 20 times, and then sent back over here to destroy us and our reputation around the world, to hollow us out and everything else. So am I worried about J.D. Vance? No, I'm really not. You know why? Because the guy grew up watching, you know, Appalachia be destroyed from fentanyl and everything else that Washington did to leave these people behind. Is J.D. Vance perfect? No. Would I prefer Tulsi Gabbard? Yes. Does not matter. Vance is the pick. You make you make lemonade out of whatever lemons you got. You go to war. Donald Trump may or may not. Up until like Saturday, Donald Trump wasn't even the general I wanted to go to war with. But guess what? He's the general I got. And now he's a different person than he was 4 days ago. Like, it's a big deal. So that was the first thing, SOFR, because SOFR's changed everything. Now,
how did that change? How did that?
It changes everything because no longer it does LIBOR. Have you ever heard my SOFR versus LIBOR rant?
Oh,
okay.
I haven't.
This is really important. So since 1984, LIBOR was the law of the land. Like, everybody indexed their dollar-denominated debt to LIBOR as a discount or premium to LIBOR. Your mortgage, your adjustable rate mortgage, your credit revolver, your credit cards, everything. It used to be the prime rate in the United States, and it was replaced by LIBOR, right? Yep. LIBOR is a Eurodollar market indexing rate. Effectively, it's telling you what the price of dollars is in the global markets, not in American markets.
I see.
So, what is SOFR? Secured overnight financing rate is a market-driven rate based on actual, honest-to-God, everyday transactions within the interbank markets, in the interbank repo markets in the United States. It's reflective of the situation in the U.S. with respect to the Fed funds rate. And if there's no stress at 5.5% in the American banking system because it's got enough liquidity to keep for everybody to deal with their credit issues on a daily basis, that doesn't matter. But if under LIBOR, if London got in trouble, or Hong Kong got in trouble, or Frankfurt got in trouble, or Paris got in trouble, well, then LIBOR would blow out. Or let's be even more evil, because this is how much I despise the fucking British. They go out of their way to lever up Northern Rock, Barclays, HSBC, Standard Chartered, and all their other goddamn shitty London banks. Lever their shit up. When the Fed goes to raise interest rates, LIBOR blows out 5 points, and when the Fed raises by 1.5 points, their banks start to teeter over. Everybody in the United States is indexed to LIBOR. All of a sudden, my credit card goes from 9% to 18% overnight. Your company credit revolver gets called in. It has to be or it's an adjustable rate. And it gets, your next quote is, oh well, we had this at 4%. Now it's 9%. Now all of a sudden we can't pay our credit revolver back, and stocks start crashing and businesses start falling, and credit impulse in the United States collapses, and they go on a fucking binge, on a dollar lending binge, and we have to pay the freaking price for it.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the Fed was the central bank of the world, and it was created by Greenspan, Bernanke, and Yellen. Greenspan didn't have enough friggin' balls to stand up the City of London and always cut interest rates too early. And then Bernanke and Yellen they're committed globalists. I don't know about Bernanke. He may just be with no, like Greenspan, kind of a ballless eunuch. But Yellen is definitely a committed friggin' commie. Always has been. Go read her and her husband's, research, and you'll see that. She's a labor economist. That's another way of saying communist. Like, screw these people. This is what we're dealing with. These people are literal freaking traitors. And so he got Powell and John Williams. John Williams was the architect of SOFR at the San Francisco Fed. It sat there as a white paper in the Fed for 10 years, which Geithner and Yellen and Bernanke didn't do anything about. Didn't have the balls to change. Why? Because they were literally selling the country out at 0%. He got that done. That happened under Trump, whether Trump wanted that to happen or not, but somehow that happened. So whoever recommended Powell to Trump is the hero. I think it might have been Steve Mnuchin, but don't quote me on that. And then the other thing that happened was, of course, getting a whole bunch of constructionist judges on the federal circuit courts that allowed for all of the Supreme Court decisions that we've seen recently. All of those things are downstream of those judges ruling properly and forcing the appeals process up to the Supreme Court, where in the past those things were, they were tamped down. They could never get through the process. So what happened there was really a very strong one, right? That's a small, subtle point, and it was an important point. And it's part of the reason why, Trump was happy with Mitch McConnell, because it was McConnell, and while I hate Cocaine Mitch as much as the next guy, it was McConnell that got all those appointments through. I distinctly remember Trump sitting there going, "This guy is great about getting this stuff done," and like, this is, don't go, he was really, really honestly salutary of McConnell's ability to push his judges through the Senate. Of course, McConnell just bargained a whole bunch of other stuff away, because that's what he does. And stabbed Trump in the back over the impeachments and everything else, but whatever. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. No, but at the end of the day, nobody is a villain and nobody's a hero. Like least poll wholly. Nobody's black, nobody's white. Trump is a mixture of good and bad. McConnell's mostly bad, but he's got a little bit. But every once in a while, he does the right thing. And maybe it's just simply put that Mitch tries to do a good thing, and then every once in a while he gets thrown down the stairs. I mean, like this is part of our American politics. Like McConnell's shown up with a broken arm. Does everybody remember Henry Reid or Harry Reid? What about John Roberts? Like at the end of the day, you have to remember that it is just gangster politics at a certain level. And, you don't do what we want. It would be a real shame if you got thrown down the stairs. Yeah. Yeah. Like, this is real, folks. They do it with reputational attack first. And if that doesn't work, then they just whack you upside the knees. And, frankly, all the real people and the real players in Europe are such pussies that they just hit that the reputational attacks all work. But, Europe is a different thing because the European Union is a very, very craftily designed thing to destroy, to give them as many levers as possible that are economic and legal and whatnot to bring people to bear. So you watch a guy like Viktor Orban in Hungary do everything he can to do the right thing, but every once in a while he has to cut a deal. Mm-hmm. And of course, then everybody then turns around and goes, "See, Orban's not really a hero. He caved on this." Like, no, guys. Like, you be the leader of Hungary, a landlocked country of 11 million people, and try and beat the freaking blob. Like, you're going to lose battles. That doesn't mean you're a bad guy. You're just a guy that's going to lose battles, and we have to be realistic about what we can expect from in our expectations of any of these people. And but we're also friggin' gaslit and anxiety ridden and in fight or flight mode and whatnot. That we've all become single issue voters about everything. Yeah. Meaning if a guy does one thing that I don't like, he's done. Obviously he's a. It's like we're at that. I mean, we're at that point with Putin, for Christ's sake. Like somehow Putin is, a secret mother weffer, and like, well, he used the words "fourth industrial revolution." That's your tell. I'm like, how? The stupid, it burns. Like it's just, yeah. But you can't do anything about it because, and at a certain level, you have a little bit of sympathy for people who are that gaslit, who are that on edge, that worried that they can't even, they can't even separate those things. And the ones who can do it consistently after you've tried to talk them off the ledge with the rhetorical high-powered rifle. Then you realize that if they don't change their position at all, they're operative. They work for somebody else, and that's it. And then you just and it's either wittingly or unwittingly, and it doesn't matter. They're either a useful idiot water carrier, or they're literally working for somebody else's intelligence service. And then you just take them off your list. And again, you just do good signal to noise, ratio, error analysis on these people, just to bring it back to the chemist thing.
Right. So then, let me ask you one more question. Big topic, obviously, as always. But where does all of this we just discussed put the global financial system and central bank coordination, and what's the state of all that stuff right now?
The state of all that stuff right now is that let's watch it play out over the next couple of weeks because everybody expected Donald Trump to be dead, and everybody's position was positioned as if Donald Trump was going to be dead. And gold is $24.40 an ounce, and the euro was $1.09, and credit spreads between U.S. and Germany were are now they're furiously trying to save them. The global financial system has to deal with the idea that Powell is not going to cut rates until after the election, and that Powell's job at this point, the best he can, is to force the fiscal reckoning onto Washington. And he does that by keeping rates high and then, continuing to say, look, the fiscal position of the United States is not my problem. It's Treasury's problem. It's Congress's problem. It's not the Fed's problem. I am not going to bail you out. I'm doing what I need to do to tame inflation, get things under control, and deal with that. And that's what I'm going to do. And in some ways, Powell has been incredibly calm through all this. Every once in a while, he's looked a little on edge, a little nervous. But for the most part, he's been a rock. And every time he opens his mouth, I see him go into the ECB and basically say, well, inflation expectation, we don't see inflation expectations in the United States getting back below 2% until the end of 2026. Translation, Christine Lagarde, I'm not lowering rates.
Yeah.
I'm not bailing you out. And Lagarde literally lost her mind. And then Lagarde was forced to take questions from people who would never be in the room with her. So who set that up? That there were certain members of the financial press asking her hard questions. This was Powell literally putting his junk on the table and going, yeah, no, you're done and we're taking you out. And, good. But what that means is we in the United States and in the rest of the world are going to have to realize that Powell is going to do what he needs to do to break the backs of the old Eurodollar system, because it's the Eurodollar system that created the American empire, and it's the Eurodollar system that can end the American empire and bring back a more humble United States and a more, and ultimately in the future, a more powerful United States. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
This is both good and bad. So, but the question is, do we reform at the fiscal level? Do we reform up in Washington or not? And that the response from Davos is going to be to burn the world down. They did it before. They'll do it again. And their policy relative to Russia and Ukraine tells you everything you need to know. They are setting up tripwires, or have set up tripwires, to get the United States into an Article 5 situation because the Poles did something dumb, or the Romanians did something dumb, or the Estonians did something dumb. That's just the way it is. And they know what they have to do. Trump survived. They expect Trump to survive. Now the war's been put on hold for a few more months. Now we're going to see the kind of escalation or the kind of false flag event, which is next, because they need to burn the system down. They need to renege on all their promises to us. They can't pay these pensions. They can't make this work. It's not possible. And they want to thread the needle to bring the TLDR on this down. Is understand it for relatively the layman in the audience. It's really simple. They want to burn the system down, but they want to thread the needle that they are the ones that wind up in power after we're done. They're threading that needle. They can burn the system down, and everybody loses. We all just wait for the flash and the 50,000 SPF sunblock, and smoke them if you got them, boys. It's over. Civilization is over, and we're all living and then Charlton Heston emerges 3,000 years later on a horse, going, "Yeah, blow it up, you maniacs!" That's what we're dealing with, right? Or they try and thread the needle so that they get to be that we bring us right to that brink, and then they get to still be in charge on the other side of it. That's
how
what
do they
want.
do that? How do they thread the needle?
I don't know how they do that, Henry, because the Russians and the Chinese understand what they're trying to do. The Saudis are literally telling them, "You do what you think you're going to do, and we're going to dump all of our U.S. and French debt, and we're going to blow up your banks. Fuck you." And everybody's like, "Well, the Saudis don't own any French debt." I literally saw these dumb people on Twitter say, "Well, the Saudis only own American debt." I'm like, really? You don't think that the Saudis have dollars and don't take some of their surplus dollars and buy French debt with it, or German bunds, and run a real portfolio? You really think that they're really dumb like that? They're not smart enough to run a real portfolio? Of course they are. Come on. They're not dumb. They understand leverage. You own $20 billion worth of French debt, long dated French debt. You have leverage. You're a player at the table. You get a phone call from Emmanuel Macron, Emmanuel Macron takes your phone call. You own $20 or $50 billion worth of French debt. And if that's important to you, you go out and buy it.
Yep.
It's not like the Saudis aren't making enough money that they can't do that. It's they don't have trillions of dollars of American bonds sitting on their balance sheets. It's a couple $100 billion. It's not even all that much.
Yeah. Well, Tom, we got to wrap up. There could be much more to discuss, I'm sure, but this was a fascinating little tease, I'll say.
Yeah.
Where should people go to read you and keep up with what you're thinking?
Sure. Honestly, the best place is probably my Twitter feed, where I should tone it down a little bit, but the worst version of me will show up on a daily basis. At TFL1728 on Twitter. You can follow the printed work and the podcast. Everything else gets posted over at my blog over goldgoatsandguns.com or tomluongo.me. And then of course you can sign up for the Patreon where you'll get, I'm constantly all day long conversing with my community. We have a private discussion server. I do twice weekly podcasts, as I said previously, along with the monthly newsletter. So that's the gig. And the best ideas go out to them first, and then they get filtered out into the world. And the fun part about all this at this point, Henry, is that, and I never expected this to happen, but I want to make sure that I always give that shout out, which is that I never expected this as a community to become so engaged that they challenge me and they move me, and then it's now a kind of, I wouldn't say hive mind, but it's a kind of mutually beneficial idea generation engine that is more powerful than anything that I could ever put together on my own. And have to be the smartest guy in the room, because the room is always smarter than you are. And this is the lesson that Davos is going to have to freaking learn. And they won't learn it until they're taken off the stage. They really do think they're the smartest people in the room, and they really do think that they're smarter than the room, when really they're the trust fund kids of the guys who built the world.
Oh, it's a great way to end it. I will include links to those places. And really appreciate you sharing your time today, Tom.
Thank you, Henry. It was good meeting you, and we'll do it again soon.